community, because after I saw that, I felt like I understood my friend much better. She came from that dysfunctional society, And I don't know. I mean, that's why, you asked me if about tasawwuf, how I learned it. I mean, Imam Khalil is the first Muslim person that I met that knew anything about it. I mean, he told me to go and join the Jaharis, and take Islam to them. And I remember when he said that, I remembered Ahmed, because when I left Morocco, Ahmed said to me, "You'll be fine, just take Islam with you." And Imam Khalil told me the same thing. When you go with these folks, just take Islam with you, you'll be fine, But I remember one of the sisters I used to know used to tell me that, they didn't let women go in the mosque because they didn't know how to behave.
Right.
They weren't taught anything.
Right.
They didn't have any training or any teaching. They thought it was a picnic.
Right.
They would bring food and all this, So you just have to wonder about our where is the national figure? I mean, like you said, we had one here in America, and he's gone into the academic world, so to speak. But I mean, where is somebody standing up and saying, "Yes, we are the people with the real teaching"? You want to hear some of it? I'll tell you some of it.
And there's got to be that. First and foremost, they have to have. They can't be dry. They can't be dry. They have to have some drive, some fire.
Exactly.
And then along with that, they have to have knowledge.
Oh, of course.
But then add to that, they have to have the spirit. And until these three things come together, somebody who lives according to their knowledge, they're spiritual beings that are able to answer questions, but they're also able to speak to power, right? Then,
Well, see, this is what, when I told, my neighbor, she called me to see if I had watched the new Pope and all that. And I said, well, yes, I did, and I haven't really thought too deeply about it yet. I didn't mention to her my fear. I said, I'm still bereft about Francis. And I'm going to be bereft about him for a while, because he was lovable. This is the thing about Francis. You could hug Francis. Who else out there do you think you can hug?
I have to say, this is the thing that my wife's like. She loves Sheikh Khalil.
Yeah.
And she's like, you just want to hug him.
Well, I said that to him once, and of course Umar Adwan was standing there. He said, hug her. It was really sweet, But, he had to be cool. I understand that, he had to be cool. But he did everything, but because, people just loved him.
So
there was love there, at the bottom of it all.
And I think that's the thing, is that people didn't just love him because of him. He loved them.
Yes.
So
of course. One time, I used to go to the Tuesday night prayers, and this one time I remember, and that was before. After I stopped going, they shoved all the ladies upstairs. And I thought, well, that's ridiculous. How are they going to ask a question if they're upstairs?
Tuesday night was tafsir, right?
Yeah, it was. I think it was tafsir. But it was
one
always,
night was sirah, one night was
It was always
tafsir.
a mixed bag with him. You felt like you had the prophet sitting there, right? In fact, I saw the prophet one day when he was sitting there. I had experiences like that in Masjid al-Nur. I mean, they were like instantaneous windows that would open. But anyway, and we used to sit over in the corner, I remember, and there was this one guy, he was an Egyptian guy, and he only came around for maybe 6 or 8 months or so. And he was a kind of loudmouth, he liked to talk. And I forget what his situation was, but this one night, after the class, everybody would sort of hang around, and talk and with each other, and there might be cookies or something, And he started in on the imam. I don't remember what he was arguing about, but he started berating him or arguing with him about something. And it was so beautiful. All the rest of the brothers just slowly came and surrounded Imam Khalil. I mean, it was just wonderful, you know. I mean, I would have gone over too, but the brothers had it under control, so I stayed where I was. But I saw it actually happen. You know, they just came around and protected him from this guy with the loud mouth, you know. And, Imam Khalil, he didn't suffer fools, you know. He said, don't bother with these people. You know, I mean, we have plenty of good people. Why let this one person mess you up, you know?
So, you mentioned the flashes that you yourself had.
Oh, yeah.
And so that takes us to a different
Right.
conversation. And I don't want to ask about them now because, you know, I do plan to share this. And so everything's not for sharing.
Right.
But we all have our own spiritual journey.
Of course.
Here you are 89?
89
years old. You've had this magnificent, wonderful journey. And along with that, you have your own spiritual practices. So we'll close by saying, you know, share some of your spiritual insights. Like, what are some of the things that, spiritually speaking, you know, stick out to you or stick with you on this journey of life?
Wow. I guess I'm kind of tired right now, so I'm not thinking a little clearly, but you know, really, you have to get me early in the morning.
I apologize.
You know, because when I'm in tune with the cosmos, right? More in tune with the cosmos, you know. Well, I don't know. It's a kind of an openness, I suppose. You know, I mean, none of these things would have happened to me. You know, I would not have been able to do any of these things if I hadn't had a real kind of trust and faith in Allah. You know, even before I became a Muslim, I knew about God, you know. I mean, I think I told you, you know, I asked my dad once when I was probably, 8 or 9 or younger, do I pray to God or do I pray to Jesus? And he said, no, you pray to God. You love Jesus. Right. You know, and that solved a whole lot of problems for me, right? And so there's a part of your religion where you worship and you pray because you know it's beyond you. I mean, the one who created you, who created everyone, the one, you know, all of those things that we learn from all the Holy Scriptures, right? But then there's the love. The one who you loved, that's what allows you to live this life, really, without either going crazy or getting sick or being utterly miserable all the time or whatever. You know, to have a nice, decent life where you can find meaning and do good works and all of that has to be love. And I went along for a long time thinking that I was going to find a man to love. I was going to have a husband. You know, and that was going to be the love of my life, you know, after you leave your parents, right? You know, of course, I always loved them, but this is different. This is the grown-up love. You have a husband, you make a family. It just didn't happen for me, you know, and there I was, you know, in the world alone. It took me a long time to realize that that was what it was going to be, you know. And, you know, that kind of love of Allah became the sustaining thing. You know, I could still love my fellow man, my brothers and sisters, my family, you know, have all of this love for them and, you know, love Jesus, love the Prophet. But mainly it was Allah, it was God, it was our Lord, it was the creator of the universe, our sustainer, the one who made it all, who made you, this, everything, you know. That you had to find that love in that. And it seems so far, so hard to do. Without tasawwuf, I don't know that I would have ever really been able to have some fathoming of it, because sometimes you feel close, sometimes you feel not, and you understand what that is. That's the part of being a human being. It's our soul, the fluctuations in our soul, the way He created us, our mind, our spirit, all of our parts, and the fact that we're only here for this brief span, and that we grow old and everything changes, and all of those things. If it wasn't for the love, how would you be able to bear it? The mystery is not enough. And Allah tells you that I will love you and then you will love me. But first you have to acknowledge me. First you have to turn to me. There's a first step to all of this, and our Prophet taught us those steps, and they're all laid out for us, and the people of Tasawwuf, they just try to elaborate on them a little bit. They just try to help you through the wilderness. Push aside some of the stuff of the world and the material life and help you to hone in on, making dhikr Allah, finding the spiritual, the symbolic, that deeper meanings, those layers of meaning, and if it wasn't for the fact that I learned how to fall in love all the time, I'm falling in love all the time, and because I know that it's Allah. The love we have comes from Him. This is, and people that don't know that, they're, I don't know. Christians today, that's one of the reasons I liked Francis, because he was always reminding people he was the true, they say the Pope is the vicar of Christ. Well, that means he's representing Jesus on earth. Wearing all that fancy clothes, is that representing Jesus? He stuck to his white cassock through his whole time, and he tried to, considering all the imperial junk he had put on him all the time, he really tried to live like Jesus, as much as it's possible in this day and age, and with somebody in an important position and world renown and all of that, he really tried to do that. And that means there's love there. It has to be through love. Knowledge, people of knowledge can still be mean-spirited people.
Absolutely.
The knowledge is good. We strive for that. Being a scholar is something you strive for in Islam. It's the highest thing we can strive for, but without the love, without the love. And this was the thing about Imam Khalil and Ridwan, that team, there was love there, and you knew there was love there. And the people who grew to love them, they partook of Allah's love. This is what Tasawwuf is. You go to a sheikh of Tasawwuf because you think they know how to get through this life, and still have love for God, and each other. You think if they're not teaching you that, what are they teaching you? You can read a lot of books, you can get on your machine, you can, if it's just simple information or knowledge you want. And this is something that you have to have suffered a lot, and you have to have had your heart broken many, many times. You have to be able to weep on a regular basis, you have to let it go. You have to come down and say, wow, children being killed, what is this, you have to cry for them, you have to let that come out from you, so that your heart stays, soft and easy, And that's really, without Tasawwuf, Islam becomes kind of a hobby for these people. Something they do part-time, because we know that politics has become a game, and then religion is a hobby. So, what are we left with, without tasawwuf, I feel sad. You know, thank God there are people out there trying to fathom that. I mean, it's deep, you know, and there are people mess it up and call it different things and behave in bad ways. We know that. But that's not the whole story, you know, and you can't let yourself be distracted by people who, you know, misbehave or something. You know, you have to keep digging for the real thing, you know. And that was how I just kept that. I kept doing that, you know, and Allah has protected me and rewarded me along the way, you know, in so many beautiful ways, you know. I just can't even begin to and you know, brother, I thank God for you. I send prayers to you every day. I hope they get there. Because I have nobody in my life like you. I've not found anyone that I could really tell a lot of these stories to, or talk in this way, or use language in the way I can use with you. And all of these things, I mean, I can be, all of these girls that's living in this body, you know, all of these girls, I can be that with you, and it's such a really wonderful thing, and you are never out of my prayers, believe me, and all your family, and you know, they're always included, of course, you know, and so anyway,
no,
mashallah.
May Allah accept it. I mean, I appreciate you so much, sharing you with me. So
I used to tell some things to Imam Khalil. We used to have some very open-hearted conversations, but he had a lot of people, you know, that he had to deal with. And Ramadan, she had a whole long slew of ladies, you know, that were always calling on her. So, you know, I didn't want to, you know, take up too much of
and I don't
time.
know how many of your stories are appropriate for them.
Oh, no, I would not. I mean, for Imam Khalil, he would, you know, I mean, I could shadow around things that I thought he might like to hear about, you know. I mean, because I knew he wouldn't want to hear a lot of it. He's coming from another world from me. I accept that, and you know, he doesn't have to become completely Americanized.
Of course.
You know, just enough to get around comfortably and easily and feel safe and everything, and you know how it works. But they went and voted. They voted. You know, and they became citizens. They did all the right things that citizens are supposed to do, you know. You know. No, but there's nobody, none of my friends, nobody, you know, that I can talk to like I talk to you, brother, truly, you know, and it's amazing to me. It's just amazing to me that you've sort of drawn all these things out of me. You know, you are an amazing friend. You're an amazing guy. You know, I really love you, and I think you know that. You know, and I trust you in every possible way, and I'm so happy for you that you're on this path so sincerely, so firmly, you know, so truly, and I know Allah's going to protect you and keep you in His light, you know, every step of the way, you know, and you know, it's just stay healthy.
I'll do my best, inshallah.
Watch your health, you know, it's so important, you know, and to be healthy and not gain too much weight or eat too much meat, you know. I mean, just, you know, eat a balanced diet and get good exercise.
Alhamdulillah.
You know, because I think that's one of the ways I've stayed healthy. I've never eaten a lot of food. You know, I've always stayed pretty much the same weight my whole life. So it served me well.
No, that and the dancing.
And I'm still dancing. You know, my neighbor. I found out. I'm starting to find out more about her, and I'm finding out that she doesn't know a whole lot about music. I mean, and you know, I'm always amazed. I mean, have you ever been to the symphony?
Oh, when I was younger. I haven't been as an adult. I don't think I've been since I've been a Muslim. I haven't. So since I've been 21, I've never been.
Yeah. Well, you know, the symphony is amazing, a miraculous thing. I mean, to sit in. I mean, and we have a wonderful symphony hall. It's acoustically very good, and it's an interesting design and all of that. And to sit in that symphony hall and see those, you know, 50, 80, 100 musicians sitting up there and reading these little squiggles on a page, right? And all doing it together in harmony and playing these beautiful melodies and having these wonderful rhythms and motions to it. I mean, it's an amazing thing. I've taken all my Muslim friends there. You know, well, not all. I took Maria, my friend from Dubai, she went, and I took my friend Samira from India, and they were both amazed. They didn't, you know, and really enjoyed it. I think, you know, it's not something either one of them grew up with, but they could see the beauty of it. They could feel the beauty.
For me, it's like the aquarium.
Oh, right.
No, because you can't go there and leave without being inspired with all. The symphony is like that. You know, if a person goes there with an open heart, then they leave with a reminder of God. They
should. They should.
Because that harmony, that ebb and flow, that symphony, you know, that working cooperative, everybody is there doing something absolutely different.
Exactly.
Together.
Right. Well, this is it. Yeah.
It's kind of like, it reminds you this is the nature of life,
right? And you know, you have to love these people. You know, I mean, it's they have to have a certain kind of deep caring for each other, whether they're deep friends and they know each other and all of that, and outside of their work. But while they're doing it, they have to care deeply for each other. And you know, I mean, and I don't like all composers, and I don't like all of the music of any of them. I mean, I have my favorites like anything else, but some of the music is just so wonderful that I'm surprised. I mean, you know, I think I told you once Dr. Ayman asked me, when I became Muslim, was there anything that I missed or had to give up? I said, yeah, that's easy to answer right off the bat, music. You know, why is it that Muslims don't seem to, at least superficially, not like music? You know, they love it when they hear it. I mean, the Egyptians make wonderful music. The Iranians are great artisans on many levels, you know. And, you know, all of this, so we know that the Muslim people make music. But, you know, it's sort of thought that it's not acceptable somehow.
And string instruments.
Yeah, why is that?
Oh, because there's a hadith against it. There's a ayah in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَشْتَرِي لَحْوَ الْحَدِيثِ لِيُضِلَّ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. That there are people who they purchase vain speech in order to distract from the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there's another that, you know, compares this to the salt of shaitan, the sound of shaitan. And so they say in both of these instances, they're talking about music, you know. So music is something that takes you away, popular music more than anything, but popular music in any age, it takes you away from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It takes you away from worship. It's actually meant as an opioid. It's a distraction, it's a numbing to get you away from the experience of life, get you away from the remembrance of God, and to just fill your time. And so when people approach it in that way, and we see this today, is that, you know, people feel they can't have silence, they can't have quiet.
Right, yeah.
You know, you can't go anywhere without having some music. And this is what it does to you, is it creates an atmosphere where you can't do it. It's like a drug. You know?
Well, yeah, but you know, we know in this country, the advertising industry,
absolutely,
you know, the corporate marketplace, they use the music, you know, in a negative way.
At the same time, you know, the Muslims are the ones who began using music for medicine.
Yes.
You know, and so it's not a matter that, just like anything else, it's for recreational purposes, it's unlawful.
Right.
But for medication, for those needs, then it becomes permissible. You know, and so the reality of it is knowing the difference between numbing yourself and you know, becoming
from good music and trash, right?
Exactly.
There's plenty of trashy music out there.
That's the thing, and I think that we talked about this before. That classical music, they used to be done on this scale that was intended. The whole intention was to heal people,
Right.
to elevate people.
Right, yeah.
And now we have music that's literally meant to drag you down.
Exactly.
You know, and so
Exactly. Horrible music, yeah, you know. But you know, of course, I've always, you know, had a good feeling about music, and it was still very hard to me. Even I can understand what you're saying. I mean, and I know that, of course. I mean, when we were growing up, our parents would tell us, "Why are you listening to that awful music?" You know, they knew the difference, and they're trying to teach us the difference. But of course, you liked what your friends liked, you know, and that sort of thing.
The example I always use is that why do they put music in movies? They put music in movies when it's an adventure scene. They bring this hyped up music. When it's a sad scene, it's low, because it's not the scene that's affecting your emotions. It's the music that's, you know.
Right.
And so they're showing you in movies and television that the music itself can affect your emotions.
Oh, absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
it's a manipulation. It
Oh,
is.
yeah. Well, Lawrence of Arabia is a good example. I mean, the music in Lawrence of Arabia is outstanding. I mean, it's just so, you can listen to that music and you can, you know, feel everything in that movie practically. You know, there's desert scenes and the music, I mean, the camels and everything is just wonderful, you know. I mean, there's no movie that's done any better. It was made in Morocco, you know, and there's no movie where you're going to see desert scenes with camels and all of that better than Lawrence of Arabia. But there's some horrible parts in Lawrence of Arabia. I can't sit through it anymore. You know, if it comes on, I try to catch those parts that I like, you know, and not watch the whole long, dragged out thing, you know. But no, their music has a very deep emotional part to it. You know, and it can be used in many negative ways and many positive ways. You know, it can help people. But it's not nothing you should be listening to all the time. I mean, I didn't like it when I would get in the car with some people and they would put the Quran on. This is not, to me, I didn't like it. If I'm going to listen to the Quran, I want to listen to the Quran.
Right.
You know, I mean, to be driving the car and trying to drive the car and trying to listen to the Quran, I don't know if that's wise, you know?
I don't think that it's not background noise.
Yeah,
it's not background
exactly.
noise.
You know, so I don't put the Quran that I have, you know, any recordings or anything like that on unless I'm going to really listen to it.
Yeah, no.
You know, I'd rather just read it, you know, myself at this stage. But you know, I don't like it as background music or anything like that, you know. I mean,
I'm going to make wudu, and
Okay.
then afterwards we'll pray also.
all right.
Inshallah.
Here, you going to keep these?
Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
take
you
them.
can glance at them. There might be something you find interesting there. I already made mine, thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
You know, it's kind of nice having a neighbor that visits you who's, you know, has another religion, because sometimes she surprises you with questions. Because I never, you know, I don't bring it into the conversation unless it sort of naturally comes into the conversation. And of course, we've been talking about the Pope and all that, but that's sort of a different kind of way of talking. But you know, occasionally she'll ask or say something or ask me, and I think, oh, you know, I should really think about how, you know, be prepared to respond to her. You know, I mean, because she's coming from a different angle entirely. She's Catholic, but sort of lapsed. They don't really go to church anymore or anything like that, but they grew up Catholic.
Right.
So, you know, because she mentioned something about women You know, I mean, you can't help but see the Roman Catholic Church and how they treat women, you know, at least within their hierarchies and all that. It's all men, 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 men. But she said, well, they don't, how about in Islam? They don't really do much for the women there, do they? And, you know, I thought immediately I was put on the defensive. Because they don't, you know. But of course I had the wherewithal to recite the hadith about, you know, who do you honor most, your mom, your mom, your mom, right? And she said, so the mother is revered in Islam. I said, definitely, the mother is definitely revered, you know. And so I have to, you know, sometimes when we study, we have to remember that there are people out there that are going to ask you things. You know, this was the thing. Imam Khalil never seemed to mind that.
This is one of the... I was just asked about, you know, one of my students, Wednesday night, he asked me, how did I become me? Like, and I said, what do you mean, you know? And basically, he was asking about my journey through knowledge. Excuse me. And so I started before my Islam, like how I became a Muslim, because I entered Islam through study, you know, and I took it all the way up until 2022 when I received my last diploma, and I told him that, you know, at least five of my teachers were women. You know, I've studied with 5 different sheikhas, and that's not even counting Ridwan. You know, and so if we add her, you know, I've had 6 different women who taught me. And one of the things that I take benefit from in that is that, you know, there is no chauvinism in Islam. There's no hierarchy, men are above women in Islam. There's a reality that the man is the Amir in the household and the woman is the Wazir. They're partners. And he has a degree of authority over her, just like the ruler has a degree of authority over his advisor. However, outside of that situation,
but it's how he uses that
no,
degree.
of course, always,
exactly.
always, you know. It's true that men are the imams, that they lead the prayer, but there is nothing negating the fact that women can be teachers and scholars and guides and, you know, all of these other things. Right. So there's no religious institution outside of leading the prayer in congregation that a woman cannot have. Absolutely. And so this idea that there's some form of chauvinism in Islam, socially, that's what's observed, but that's not the reality.
Right. Well, you know, exactly. I mean, I grew up with that. My dad was the head of the house, but he never did anything without considering my mom. He considered she was a very smart lady, and he talked over everything with her.
There's 2 parts to that. You use the word consider,
yeah,
right? And now you're about to say consult, and both of them are true.
Exactly.
You have to consider the feelings and the situation and the position of the women, and you have to consult her as well. You know, so.
And she would have just done anything for him. I mean, it was a vice versa thing, you know.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's a deep respect, but you know, he went out and worked every day, and he came home and she, you know, bowed to that, so to speak, you know. And when he walked in the door, we were all, oh, wonderful daddy kind of thing, you know.
My wife she puts it beautifully, and she says, you know, women want to follow, but the men have to be men that the women choose to follow.
Exactly.
You know, you have to be someone that the woman wants to listen to.
Right.
And
absolutely.
If you're not that guy, then why is she why?
Exactly. Exactly. You know, there has to be something honorable there. I mean, I remember that one of the things I liked about Barack Obama, the first time after he was made president and he was in the White House and all that, I remember he was introducing his cabinet, some of the people he'd chosen for cabinet. I mean, when you think about what's going on now, you could just shiver. But anyway, I remember he walked out, these guys were sort of lined up there somewhere in the White House or wherever, and he walked out to greet them all and talk to everybody. And it just struck me, this is a man, a real man. He was a manly man, a man who had a family that he loved and took care of, a man you could look up to, a man you could trust. You know, all of the things that you hope for in a manly man, you know. And I admired him as much for that as I did for his political part in our country, you know. I mean, just the fact that we had a manly man up there.
On the flip side of that, you know, and I'm sure I've told you this story before, my wife, she fell in love with Ridwan and Sheikh Khalil long ago. Her first time meeting them was at a class, Wednesday or Tuesday or Thursday, whichever one it was. And it got late and people kept asking the Sheikh questions.
Right.
And finally, Ridwan over
Yeah, exactly.
She said, it's time to wrap it up.
Exactly.
And so he instantly closed.
The voice of reason.
Exactly.
Here comes the voice of reason
Like,
here.
it's time to wrap it up. And he was
Yeah. Oh, well, that's it. She just watched over him so
Yeah,
beautifully, you
amazing.
know. I mean, amazing.
And that's the thing, is to be able to have a wife that's able to speak her mind is good. You know?
Oh, you know, there's no other way. Why have two brains and two hearts and two? I mean, you know, it's to think there's another way that people manage their lives. I don't know. You know, I was lucky, you know, to have that kind of mom and dad, to see that kind of a friendship and relationship and deep love and honor, you know, and you know, it's. And you know, my mom, she always had a kind of worldly ambition.
Yeah.
You know, because she always felt like she could have done something. But she was perfectly content, although she, as I said, she complained because my dad traveled a lot and she wasn't a great disciplinarian with us. But you know, I mean, she was just do anything for him. She had such a love for him, and that was such a lucky thing for us, growing up in that atmosphere. You know.
And I think that people don't realize that how powerful that is, to be able to grow up in an atmosphere of love, actually seeing love.
Yeah, and respect, and you know, values in the citizenship values. I mean, the whole community values. You know. Neighborly things and friendships and family things. I mean, it was, I mean, really, I was so blessed. It couldn't have been more beautiful. And of course, kids, they don't realize that when they're
No, it's growing.
Yeah, you know, but I did in a certain way, because, you know, kids get to know other households in the neighborhood, you know, and you start to realize that, hey, my dad and mom are handsomer and prettier than any of them in different ways, you know, in different ways. And you start to realize how lucky you are, you know. I wanted to, I don't know how much you're paying attention to our political situation, but, you know, I mean, I just catch it on the fly as much as possible. I try not to let it get me too much, but, another little clipping I made that, you know, I read the whole article, you know, it was in a New Yorker, you know, I get the New Yorkers from the library, and this was a long article about this guy who is now the Senate Majority Leader. You know, McConnell finally retired, and his name is Thune. He's from, I can never remember, South Dakota, I think. And he's a tall, good-looking guy, and he's been around for a while. I mean, I don't know, maybe 60, something like that. Not too old, not too young, and very good manners, smart. He knows how to dance around these things without saying anything. Anyway, I clipped this one part. It was a long article and everything. It was interesting, and it made you think, well, maybe this guy can stand up to, you know. But, you know, I thought this was really interesting. It said, Lamar Alexander, he's I think he's a Democratic senator from maybe Tennessee or someplace, I don't remember. But anyway, it says, reminded me of a maxim from the late Supreme Court Justice Antonius Scalia. The conservative, he said, every tin-horn dictator and president for life has a Bill of Rights.
Mm-hmm.
It's the separation of powers that has kept America free.
No, absolutely, absolutely, and that's something that is really, the lines have been, for the last 3 months, that's been the effort, is to blur the lines of these separations of power. And for a while it was my concern because everybody was going along with it.
Yeah.
And if you go along with that's the end
It's
of
the end
America.
of our thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Well, this is, I kept the rest of the article because it just shows you how